All right, next up, I'm going to keep this as brief as possible. We've got to talk about versions. There's a reason we need to talk about this, otherwise I wouldn't waste your time on it. I promise you'll see why in just a moment. But let's talk about very, very brief history of Python. Look at this adorable timeline I made. Python was conceptualized in the 80s, but officially 1.0, version 1.0 was released in 94. 2.0 was in 2000. There's a bunch of 2.1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and a bunch of subversions within that. But 3.0 was released in 2008. So you might think people started using it in 2008. Not really. I mean, some people did. But it was a substantial change that was not backwards compatible, meaning that every tool and library and code base and framework had to be rewritten from 2.0 to 3.0. And that took a very long time for people to fully commit. Python 2 was not considered officially dead, or the development behind it at least. It was no longer actively developed in 2020. So 12 years from the time 3.0 was released, the future of Python, it took 12 years for 2.0 to be phased out. So why? Why did it take so long? Why was it such a big deal? Well, it was a major change, again, because it lacked backwards compatibility. Python 2 code would not run, or at least would not be guaranteed to run, in Python 3. So it's not just a little bump up, it broke things. So syntax changes under the hood. Here's a really quick summary of a couple differences. We've got 2.x over here, the same thing in 3.x over here. It's a slight difference, but there's parentheses here, and that's substantial. It's very tiny to humans, but to a computer, one of these is going to cause an error and the other isn't. They're totally different. Here's another tiny difference, or seemingly tiny difference, that actually is quite large under the hood. If you divide 5 by 2, in Python 2, we get a whole number, 2. If you do it in Python 3, we get a fractional or decimal number, 2.5. So this doesn't really matter all that much. You don't need to know these differences. You just need to know that there was a difference, and it took a long time for people to switch over. Just a couple of years ago, I released a Python course, and I had to I had to make a case for teaching Python 3. These days, though, now that 2 is officially considered dead, there's no arguments. So why do I bring this up? It's not just history. The main reason I'm telling you about all this is that there's a lot of 2.x resources, documentation, tutorials, courses on this very platform, YouTube videos that are all using 2.x. So a lot of it's very, very similar, identical if you're learning, but you do want to pay attention to when something was released. If you're looking at a book, if you're watching a video, if you're reading a blog post, make sure they're using 3.x. Additionally, if you're on a Mac, your computer likely actually has a version of Python pre-installed, and usually that's a 2.x version of Python. So you'll have to pay attention to that when we talk about installing things. So that's really all you need to know. Python 3 took a long time for people to fully migrate over to, but now there's no question you're learning 3. Whether you want to or not, it's what you need to learn, and it's really more just an issue of avoiding old resources and making sure you're running Python 3 on your machine, which is what we're going to do next.